back, I don't know, 2009 and 10, somewhere in there, they passed a law that the taxpayer bill of rights, and where counties have to disclose if you take in more money than you did the prior year off of what's called inflationary growth, then we have to advertise a tax increase. We don't like that. We've never liked that, and I'm sure Ted can talk a little bit more about it, but that's why we're here in a public hearing setting. So I did include under tab 10 the school board's rate. You see they, back in 2019, were at 15.33 mils for 19 and 20, then 21, 14.388, 22, 14.2, and then last year was 14 mils, 14.00, and then this year's 14.00. Now they are collecting, you see at the very bottom, 7.28% more than they did the prior year. And so, again, that's the growth in the digest that they're accepting. And that's true growth because they stayed at the same millage rate. They didn't roll back any. And so, but that is pure growth right there. So ours probably would have been similar to that if we kept the 2.25, but that's fine. And other things in here, there is a couple of videos online. If you go to our website, you'll see, you're going to find a couple of different videos, and we'll try to put those even on the front page to make it a little easier to find. I'll talk to Carrie about that. And but one of them, you know, we've been in the top 10 lowest taxes in the state of Georgia, and under tab 12, you see, again, this year we did rank in the top 10. We're number 10 this year. I think a couple of years ago, last year I think we were 5, and a couple of years before that we were 3. So, and so just, you know, be aware of that. That's good news. And then behind that, we are on the list for, I mean, pretty good nationwide. If you compare all the counties across the nation, we came out in decent shape there as well. So not the highest, not the lowest, just right there. Hopefully we're at what we need to fund the budget that was already passed back in June. The last two tabs, 14 and 15, are just a millage rate PowerPoint we put together, and that's what will be online. So I could read it, but there's no need. So see if you have any questions.
Angie, you got anything you want to say, add? Angie Galloway, she's our tax commissioner. And commissioners, you got anything you want to add?
If Angie, it may be a Paula question. When we look at the increase in the exemptions, what do you know what those are? I mean, is there? I know in Georgia there's 1 million, you know, but that's a lot of, every year it seems to be a lot more. People say, is it freeze? Does the freeze in your assessment go in that, or timber, land things, or 65 and 5? You know, you know.
Yeah, it does.
It's just all this.
Combination of everything out there. The more exemptions we have, the more.
Yeah, but I just seen if there was a, you know, what was, I guess, the exemption. I know it's a lot. Like I say, they've got a lot of them. You know, the farms and you name it, but, and then the 65 and 5, I guess there's just more people coming to that age than, I done passed it so fast my head's swimming, so.
Yeah, those all count big. They all sound good, but then when it comes this time of year, it's not so good.
Yep.
And I talked to the superintendent, something I didn't know. When we look at theirs, they did bring it down to 14. If they come under 14, they lose the equalization money coming back to them from the government. So that's the reason that, I don't know if they want that broadcasted or not, but that is the reason. If they come under 14, they lose a lot of money coming back to them.
I didn't know that.
All right. Alex is Mayor of Trenton. You got anything you want to add? Nothing? Okay, he's in a different position today. He's our audio video man with Daniel, of course. You know, it's good news for the county, good news for the city as far as, you know, the millage rate goes. So if there's no other questions and you don't have anything to add, Don, we'll go ahead and we'll.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
And this is related to the budget, but looking at some numbers, so the budget from the 2021 fiscal year to this new budget is 33.5% growth in that budget. And then accounting for inflation as it was reported by the nation, there's roughly 13.6% of that growth that is not covered for inflation. At the budget hearing, you know, we talk a lot about inflation, cost of living, all of that, driving up everything in the budget. Pulling it back to just this new budget as compared to last year is only a 5.7% growth, but it is still 2.7% of which is not accounted for by inflation. Currently, it's roughly a 3% inflation. So that's 2.7% that is not caused by inflation. I'm wondering what all is contributing to that. 2.7% is a lot better, but over time it does add up, and inflation we know is going to keep going up. So what contributes to those percentages of growth in the budget that is not covered by inflation?
The question, so at the end is what now? What?
So aside from inflation, what else is causing the county budget to go up?
Oh, besides of inflation, it's just the operation of the county. You know, you've got fuel, you've got cost of our prisoners. You know, as far as maintaining our judges, well, judges one too, maintaining our jails, and it's just the whole cost of actually operating the county. You know.
So that would be inflation, though, with all of
Well,
Not necessarily. Inflation is more of like the cost of living. So, I mean, it does kind of go hand in hand, but it is a little bit, it's because you never know, like in the jail, you never know if somebody's going to come in and they need, have
medical.
have medical something, you know, there's that. And then you also don't know if we're ever going to have like a tornado again or some terrible storm. So, you know, it does go hand in hand, but it is a little bit different.
And also, you know, you know, a lot of our units are high dollar, like AC units, HVAC units, are older. We've replaced a lot of them in the past. We still have a lot of things that's got to be done. A lot of things in that jail over there that, you know, we want to relate that. That's not inflation. That's just that's stuff we have to do in the county, and plus maintaining the employees that we have here. You know, whether it be deputies or just workers, we've got to keep up with that. And you may tie that to inflation, but we've got to keep up with that job market as far as. Well, who would ever thought you could go to McDonald's and make $16 an hour? You know, so you know you could.
Wouldn't that still be tied, like the cost of living? Wouldn't that still be tied to inflation?
Yeah. It could be, but there again, you know, it's just the operations of the county, you know. I mean, it's not nothing. There's no great things that out there that just jump out, you know, that happen. You've got to calculate, you know, the next year of actually the operations, and you can't be left in the. We went through this years ago, and you know, 15 years ago, and. You know, we depleted our reserve and all, and then we came in and we were doing pretty good, and then the tornadoes hit and all. We learned a lesson back then, you know, as far as operation of this county, you know. And so I don't. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah. So to get to your question, we calculated that at 4.34%. Now I know you're looking back at what 21? Did you say back to 21 budget?
21 to 25.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have that variance, but just going from 24 to 25 is 4.34%, and you know our increase on the 5-year history is 4.16. So we actually had to make a few cuts just in order to get it under that, to make up that difference between 0.34 and 0.16. But let me say this. You're right, COLAs are tied to inflation in a way, but a lot of times we're competing, especially in the sheriff's office, 911, different areas like that, jailers, with, Walker, Catoosa, sometimes Whitfield, mostly Hamilton, even Jackson and DeKalb. So COLAs were in there, what was it, 3%, 4%, 3% raise this year. So there is some inflation in that, of course. I mean, that's a fair statement. But then again, some of it's just trying to keep up, and make it more competitive. There were $102,000 in health insurance increases this year, and that has just steadily gone up. I mean, inflation, call it whatever. I mean, our medical claim history actually improved this past year. It really got pretty bad the prior years, 2 or 3 years prior. And we actually partner with the Water Authority. They have a little bit richer plan than we've got, but we still have the same kind of insurance. So their people seem to be a little healthier than us, which is good because that helps offset that increase. Another thing is we did a budget this year, which is not inflationary, $68,000 for property assessment, all right? So it's the state of Georgia wants you to be right at 40% on collections, and they compare the Department of Revenue, compares that to the Department of Audits and Accounts on an annual basis. And then they generate what's called the sales ratio report. And that report about 3 years ago got way out of sorts, and they put us under a consent order. Now, we did a lot of due diligence, and we were able to work with the department, both departments, to clean up a few, just 2 or 3 of those inside of that ratio report that they had selected, which did help us get back to the minimum, which is 36%. If you fall under, it's 36, I think, 36% in Georgia, they'll only allow that for a few months. They will not go more than a year, and if you go more than a year, you're under a consent order. But you don't want to be under consent order because ultimately, if it's a 2-year deal, they will actually hire the firm to come up and do the reevaluation of all properties. So we do a 1/3, and Paula I was hoping Paula could be here, but she's not today, but maybe she'll be at the next meeting. We do the 1/3 assessment of all the county, and so over a 3-year period, they've looked at pretty much every parcel and reviewed them. Sometimes, of course, all new buildings and new stuff, and that's what I'm talking about, growth. Some of that is in the digest. I mean, some of it is, somebody added a concrete driveway or put a room onto a building or whatever. And if that is missed, it does happen from time to time, but we have to compare Georgia to a lot of MLS information, and that's where your comps are being sold. Someone from California recently, we were told this week, and it happens quite frequently, and I'm not throwing people from California under the bus, but they bought a place sight unseen for half $500,000. Now, they sold their place for $1.5 million. Great for them, but when they come over here and buy a $500,000 house that's really been all the other homes were selling for $300,000, let's say. Well, that's that alone is not going to raise everyone's assessment. But when they start doing it in a pattern, and especially in a neighborhood, that is possibly going to raise the assessed value of everybody in that neighborhood. But there's all kinds of formulas and stuff they have to go through. That's definitely a Paula question. I don't want to get down in those weeds because I don't know enough about it, but I do know that that has happened. I mean, that has happened, like we were told that earlier in this week of one that happened last week on Lookout Mountain. So, and so it's when sales happen, the sales tax ratio report takes a look at all those. But the fallacy of that is they use some languages in the Georgia Constitution that makes the Department of Audits 1 year old and the Department of Revenue the current year. It's one way or the other. I get who's current and who's behind a year. I don't know. But that's never fair because when you have a lot of increases because of market sales, they don't show up instantly. It takes 12 months for those to kind of catch up. Now, the reverse happened back in, was it 2006 when the market collapsed, 2008 when it collapsed?
Well, so,
The exact happened opposite here. And, we had ratios that were upside down. And so we could literally we had to raise the millage rate just to collect what we collected the prior year. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened. And it has happened in Dade County, actually in my 18 years here, once, maybe twice, and back to back. You don't want that to happen because that means you're in a deep recession. I mean, that's a bad situation. So hopefully that helps a little bit on that. The other thing is inmate food. We did increase that. That's not necessarily inflationary growth, although some of the increase was a result of inflation, but a lot of inflation in food happened from the 21 budget to the 22 budget to the 23 budget. And then the 24 budget. The 24 budget, 25 budget, actually most of that increase is, we anticipate housing some of Chattooga County's prisoners. And because Chattooga County is under a different kind of consent order, I understand, a judicial order, where they can't use their jail per se. And so they use Floyd County and Dade County to house their inmates. Now, the flip side of that, if you look at the top of the budget, there's a revenue line item there too, where they're paying us. So that's kind of an offset. But we have to show the revenue and the expense. And so when you do that, just like Robert has said over the years, you got to show both. It raises the whole overall budget. It may be a $10 million budget, but you still have to raise it by Georgia law. We have to go by governmental accounting, so that's what we do.
and that was a little lower than what we anticipated, so that kind of put it in a weird little spot.
It was,
too.
right. Right. We anticipated that happening last year, but they didn't, for whatever reason, the sheriff of Chattooga didn't send them over. So we've extended that invitation one more time if that's something they want to do.
That same thing happens with grant funds as well. If we get grant funds, we have to show the revenue separate from the expenses.
Right. So
that'll make your expense go up if you get a $1 million grant.
right.
They may be giving you 800,000 back and you're only paying the 20% if it's an 80-20, but you have to show that whole expense down there.
That's correct.
You can't just show the 200 you're paying.
That's right.
So that can also cost some of that increase.
Yeah, and because anytime we deal with FEMA, GEMA, Homeland Security, you put an application in today, it may take 10 years. I mean, so we until they send us that letter where it's been approved, we don't know. And that has happened over the last 4 years where, one, we see the new storm shelters that are in place, and those are awesome. But we wanted them years ago, right after 2011, but we didn't actually construct them, Alex, till 2022, 2023. And so finally they went online, then we submit those payments, they got reimbursed, we got reimbursed all in a big chunk. And so like $800,000, we had to amend the budget 1 year up. And so that's not inflationary growth, that's just the way that governmental accounting works. Ted was right, HVAC, we did budget $25,000 more this year. Upcoming, because we know our American Rescue Plan Act funds are being depleted. They'll go away. I mean, we'll have most of those, we'll have all of those designated by December 31st of this year. And so once they're gone, they're gone. So you've got to reasonably anticipate, putting some of that back in the budget, and that's what we've done. 25 may not be enough, but hopefully we've used a lot of those ARPA funds, in our opinion, wisely. The commission has decided way in advance they wanted to use that for infrastructure, and so they've replaced a lot of HVAC units, and hopefully we'll get a lot longer life out of those. For instance, I think last year we got a brand new system at the library. I mean, it's totally brand new. And we didn't pay a penny for it. That was 100% grant, which was great. Property insurance went up. Inflation, I don't know, maybe, but it went up. I mean, we used to buy sheriff's vehicles for when I first started, 25,000.
Yeah.
That it's not the same vehicle, but it's now $50,000-$60,000. I mean, go buy a brand new truck. It's almost as much as my first house cost. I mean, I can't understand that. But that's the way it is. And so if something's worth more and they wreck, there's an accident, well, we have to replace it, and they're going to replace it. They raised the rate, $17,000. We did have 2 new positions in the sheriff's office approved this year. I mean, that was $112,000, but that includes everything, their benefits, their taxes, and everything. Nobody's making no sheriff's deputy that I'm aware of is making $100,000, including, okay. And then the ambulance position, we have a full-time person in there. EMS chief was created, and so that's there. And then the building and grounds, we have a full-time and a part-time. The old courthouse is coming online. The depot building is coming online, and then sooner or later we'll have a new elections building and possibly even an animal control facility in the future. You can't claim that much square footage with 2 people. We had 2 people. And so, and we haven't hired them per se yet because we don't have all the buildings per se. I mean, we have one of the positions, but we don't have both. So taking all that into consideration, that's a lot. And it's hard, I mean, I get it. It did go from 21 to 25 budget up.
Does that kind of answer your questions?
If it don't,
Case answer.
Anything else on your mind? All right, we'll go ahead and we'll adjourn our public hearing, and we'll be back here tonight at 6 o'clock. So appreciate everyone listening, and you're welcome to come and ask questions. Thank you.